Welcome to Cultivated Live. My name is Jay Rosenthal. I'm the co-founder of Cultivated Media, the host of this program called Cultivated Live. We do this every single day at 10 a.m. Eastern through our LinkedIn channel, through our YouTube channel. We bring you the most important, insightful, useful, and timely information for the cannabis industry. We've been doing this show since February. We've been around with our newsletter, which you can find at cultivated.news. Since November, once a week, we're joined by LJ Dawson. She is the editor-in-chief of the Outlaw Report. We talk about the DMV, not the Department of Motor Vehicles, but DC, Maryland, and Virginia. LJ, welcome.
Thanks again for having me, Jay. We got to Friday already somehow.
I know it's been another one of those weeks where a lot seems to be happening. And we always like to check in with you to find out what's happening in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. What is happening now in DC? Because you've been hinting and alluding to this over the past couple of weeks. You have a story out about enforcement in DC about unlicensed cannabis retailers. What's going on down there?
Yeah, so to give everyone a little bit of a catch up, we've been in an almost 2-year transition to expand our medical legal market. We are not allowed to have an adult use thanks to being a district in DC and the federal government hating us.
It's not everybody in the federal government, but it's
well,
some.
the ones that are important.
Obviously.
They can't come to a consensus to think that we're able to have an adult use market, right? So they decided to create an expansion, and one of the things the expansion did was try to bring in a lot of unlicensed operators that were operating under an initiative that allowed gifting. They were very liberally applying it, and there actually had been enforcement against these operators for years. They would get raided by the police department, and they would get all their products, all their money taken, and then their charges would be no papered. There have been federal indictments against some of these unlicensed operators. But all this stopped because the actual expansion wanted to give them a handout and hand up into the legal medical market. And part of that was actually giving them a safe period of running their gifting stores and saying that we as a city would not go after them. And that ended early this year. And we are coming on the closing cycle of all of the license periods that have been offered to these unlicensed operators, but also to anyone that wants to come into the medical market in DC. And we're hearing some really frustrated legal medical operators who are just over it because this enforcement that has been promised has sort of kind of started, but it's not been taken seriously. And I've heard words getting thrown around like it's a joke. There's nobody that is taking it like actually to heart because our regulatory agency has been giving out their warnings and their cease and desists, and unlicensed shops will just open back up the next day. And they're really not doing anything to stop the gifting operators in our city.
And just to point out, there are licensed medical cannabis dispensaries in DC that would like, if they don't say it publicly, they would like that enforcement to kick up on these unlicensed gifting shops because it's hurting their business. We've seen this in other places, like most notably New York most recently.
Absolutely, Jay. And what's crazy is they actually are saying this publicly, and they're beginning to shout it starting this month because we kept being told by the regulators, we call them ABCA in DC, that they were going to start enforcement, and they did. They did start enforcement. They started passing out warning letters to shops. We have probably close to over 100 unlicensed shops in DC, and they've warned under 60. They've given cease and desist letters out to under 20 at this point. And there's only one guy that's doing this enforcement. MPD, our police department, other agencies have been involved, but just like kind of peripherally. And they're not closing people down, and the medical operators are really starting to hurt in our city in DC. And so they are starting to shout like, we need more enforcement. And actually this past month, or actually in this summer now, there was a bill passed that allowed these unlicensed operators to be padlocked by our regulatory agency, which is what we've seen in New York. We've seen something called Operation Padlock, where the mayor, the governor are just proudly stating we've been able to just throw padlocks on these stores. We're getting them out of there. But that was after a while, Jay. I think it was a couple years of them trying to get a handle on this market. And they finally were like, we've got to padlock it. And so the DC bill that was passed was actually in some ways modeled after New York's experience. And they said, all right, we're giving ABCA, which is our regulatory agency, the right to padlock these stores. And yet we have not had a single store padlocked. And a lot of these operators are asking, like, when is this going to begin? And we've been asking as a news outlet too, and we're getting no answers.
And it was, just to go back to New York for a second, there was lots of concern for a long period of time. And then the market sort of opened up for licensed cannabis dispensaries, adult use. And then there was pressure that they were putting on saying we can't really compete because we have all these unlicensed stores. Then it really did take sort of a full effort of the governor, the legislature, and in this case, the mayor of New York City, to say, we are going to take this and make it real. And it did take takes a village. It was taking a village to padlock one store. And then once they started, it really ramped up, and they've done, I think, several hundred. And now in New York City, especially in Manhattan, the licensed retailers are seeing the rewards of that, in that they're seeing increased business. You're saying DC medical operators would like to see the same thing. It's just not as full-throated and not as aggressive, and it's actually not being done yet.
And I think you bringing up the mayor of New York City is really important, because that's what we seem to be missing in DC. You know, ABCA is just a regulatory agency. They are kind of at the whim of the people and the agencies above them. And that includes the mayor. And some of our medical providers have been not just calling out, but actually pointing fingers at our mayor and saying that, you know, where are you on all of this? Like, she was very much a part of the expansion. She's also been very much a part of other crime beginning to get enforced in DC at a harder level. And she has been really silent on all of this. And they're at a loss. They're like, you know, we contribute to this economy. If they decided to transition, they decided to transition in good faith. And the mayor has not been vocal at all about closing down or not closing down these unlicensed stores. And in fact, we've reached out to her multiple times for a comment, and she has refused to comment. Their office has pointed us back to our regulatory agency, which can only do so much, right? This is a political moment. This is a political decision, as we saw in New York. And we saw that it really took as you said, a whole village to just shut down one shop, you know? And these people that are operating unlicensed gifting stores, they're providing a real service to a lot of people in DC and surrounding areas. And if they are not given high enough consequences, they're not going to close, because these are people that have operated on the border of illegal, illicit, you know, high risk taking for forever. And a lot of them have 5 years behind them on their locations and their stores. And there's actually a store that's operating directly across from our regulatory agency that did finally apply for a license. But a lot of these places that have been open and running were not allowed to keep gifting or selling cannabis. And they have also not seen enforcement. And so, you know, there's people who want them to keep going, but there's also the other side of the medical market and the people that have chosen to, in good faith, transition, that are they're not only mad, but they're also scared right now. Our market has been doing really badly, and they see that enforcement is not we can wait for this, you know, cute little legal process and them to establish a precedent. This is like do or die for them. This is, if we don't actually see enforcement padlock and close these stores, you know, yesterday, we might be seeing operators actually leave the medical market in DC. And we have seen operators that were licensed leave the medical market in DC.
And it strikes me that sort of this is one part of the conversation that we're having today. But if those that follow closely our show, like we were talking, I think last week, about how successful the Maryland market has been. So it seems to me that the DC medical operators that are licensed are feeling it from increased competition just across the border in Maryland, and the lack of enforcement of their other competition in DC. Like, they're not catching a break on either side of the border. And that is a tough place to be for an operator.
It's a really tough place to be. And we have a city of small operators. These are mostly very few and far between MSOs. These are, you know, local native Washingtonians who are really trying to get their foot in the market. And some of them in good faith, and they're scared right now, Jay, and they're unhappy, and they are not hearing from any agency or the leadership of DC and our mayor, Muriel Bowser.
Yeah, it's a tough spot. And again, just to point, I mean, it's not that far away, and we follow the news quite closely. Like New York has done it. It did take a long time. It took a lot of political capital, but it did get done. And I think the important part, which is I'm sure what the license operators in DC saw or are seeing, is that it does equal better business, right? It does equal better business for those operators that are licensed, that now there's fewer illicit or unlicensed competition, and consumers will enjoy the regulated market and find the product they need and find it conveniently. And I think that's what DC wants to get to. Again, it's this, it seems like a lack of political oomph to get it done. And what in your mind, what would create that oomph to get it done? If it's not the operators screaming at the top of their lungs, and it's not news asking them about it, either industry specific or general news, like how do you get it done? Like, do you have any line of sight on that?
Because I have all the answers, Jay. No, I'm kidding.
You do.
DC is a hard place. A lot of people are unhappy with our mayor and have been for a while, but she's in her third term now. And so it's a Democratic leaning city, and there's usually only one candidate, and she's kind of got a stranglehold on the city. And so it would really take her feeling the pressure, and it would take the industry uniting to make her feel the pressure in a way that some people think the gifting industry has on the other side and, in their favor. Yeah. And so until there is a unified front that is able to lobby the mayor and get her to actually politically sway one way or the other and put her force behind it, nothing will happen probably, because these agencies, DC is a small place. These agencies are all very interconnected, sometimes in a messy way. And so if they're not getting that leadership from the top and we don't hear that unified voice, and also lobbying takes time. So that's the other problem. This is not something that'll be fixed in the next, few weeks. And that's the timeline that these operators are telling us they have. And so until we have some accountability at the top, whether it's in an election or whether it's through lobbying or the people actually uniting, we're not going to have anything happen. And the people of DC like their gifting operators. I mean, they offer them good prices. It's a recreational experience. And so that's another one of the issues, to get actual consumers and DC people that are living there to want to support the legal market instead of a gifting operator is maybe impossible. I can't really see why just a consumer who has no idea what else is going on, why they would, care. If their shop that they've been going to for 2 years gets shut down, they're going to be sad. They're going to go back the next day. And we've seen that these clients are rallying around these businesses that have been around forever, that they have an emotional attachment. They've been getting great products, good weed from for a while. They know the people that are selling it. They want to keep going there. So they're not going to support the legal market necessarily either.
Yeah. LJ, it's always good to talk to you, because I think, as I've said every time we talk, I think DC is one of the more unique markets because of the intricacies about how the city is actually structured from a governance perspective. I don't even know what the right word, the relationship, let's say, with Congress, the proximity to Maryland and that sort of 1-year-old market, adult use. There is so much going on, and that's why we like to talk to you on a weekly basis, because there is a lot going on, and it is important what happens in the DC market, because it is an important market, is a leading market, is a sort of market driven by sort of the cannabis culture, and we want to support that and however we can. And so thank you for taking time today for the story that you wrote about enforcement on the DC level, and we'll check in with you, if not the next week or two, then after Labor Day. I'm taking some time off. So the show will be on hiatus for a period of time, but we will talk to you soon, and thanks for your time today.
Awesome. Thanks, Jay. Enjoy your break, and we'll see you guys soon.
Thanks, LJ. That's it for today's Cultivated Live. That is what we'll be back Labor Day, the Tuesday after Labor Day. So thanks so much, everybody. LJ, have a good break.